retirementsolutions.com.
21st Century Radio is sponsored by Hieronymus and Company. Now more of 21st Century Radio with your host, Dr. Zoe Hieronymus.
Ooh, Mbappé-o, eh, 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 oh, Mbappé-o, eh, 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 oh.
Welcome to 21st Century Radio. I'm Dr. Zohar Hieronymus, and the music you're hearing is from our guest this hour, Craig Webb. His book, Dreams Behind the Music, Learn Creative Dreaming as 100 Top Artists Reveal Their Breakthrough Inspirations, is the title of his book. You can learn more at his website, www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com. Now, of course, we all know everybody dreams, but not everyone remembers their dreams. Yet all people from all walks of life claim that dreams have, among other things, saved their lives, told them the future, helped them find something lost, or, as our guest this hour will share with us, dreamt a hit song, made a scientific breakthrough, or dreamt a discovery or invention. Focusing on how to use dreams and who has successfully benefited by their dreams, especially in the music industry, is Craig Webb's focus. He is a professional dream analyst and author and shares highlights from 3,000 hours of writing, research, and interviews in this book, The Dreams Behind the Music. You're going to find out how people like the Beatles, Sting, Train, Billy Joel, the Black Eyed Peas, the Mamas and the Papas, the Rolling Stones, Johnny Cash, the Highwaymen, and others all benefited by dreams and the music they learned from them. Thank you for joining us, Craig.
Hey, great to be on with you, Zoe. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a topic of passion and interest for you and I guess the listeners, too.
Yeah, well, the good thing about it is everybody dreams, and sometimes people really want to try to make use of their dreams, and it's certainly an interest of mine and my husband's, and we've done numerous shows over the years. But your book, The Dreams Behind the Music, that you have commented that there are over 200 artists and industry executives all across the genres of music whose stories you've been able to collect. What inspired you to do this particular book?
Well, it did amaze me more and more as I got, because at the start I've been sort of speaking about and teaching and researching dreams for 20 to 30 years. But when I started gathering more than the few stories I knew about musicians, and I started getting like 50 and then 100, then 200, and even some others I didn't include in the book, I was like, wow, this is a significant contribution to, well, at least our musical art and some of the other arts, too, including film and such. But it might even be sort of the basic fabric of our culture. So I guess it inspired me to know that there was so much out there. But initially, because I have a passion for both dreams and music, I guess that was one of the seeds. And that little song that played just, I guess, to intro the show, the Mbappé-o, interesting little clip. That was actually a seed, song seed, I call it, sort of a little ditty or a little hook or something that came in a dream, and it sounded very unusual to me. It came in one of my dreams. Sounded kind of African.
Yeah, very African.
And so I didn't really know what it was, but like I suggest to listeners, I Googled anything specific. In this case, it was Umbaba, kind of the main chorus item of that little lyric. And it turns out to be this strange city of tall reptilian people, or there's gold statues copper statues and copper buildings under the mountains of the moon in Africa, which I had just dreamt about flying in the week before, and my student had dreamt of me flying on a golden dragon and stuff in this same city. So I was like, wow, maybe I'm connecting with Africa, and it's time to do the book. And then I launched into the interview with Joseph Shabalala, who worked with Paul Simon on Graceland. So I think there was some kind of inner seed growing for me to write it.
How beautiful. Well, you mentioned that you have had and you teach about dreams. What is it about dreaming that we don't use that we can?
Well, there's so many things about dreams that we could apply. First off, I usually encourage people not just to ask a pretty age-old question, at least for the last century, of what do dreams mean. And it's a good question. But sometimes different questions bring different results, at least different thoughts, but sometimes different life events and actions. So I encourage people to ask, hey, what does my dream mean, but what does it want? And so maybe it wants like a waking action. If I'm a musician or an artist or a dancer or some kind of creator, even a business person, Maybe it wants me to take action based on the dream. Not throwing out reason, but just including a little more intuition, the guidance, like Larry Page did. Many people might not know the name, but he acted on an idea for a new search engine that came to him in a dream. And, I think $750 or $800 billion later, we now have Google.
Yeah.
He acted on that dream,
And you read that across time. I mean, how many scientists and artists and creative people have relied on that sort of numinous state right between sleep and dream, or when you're first waking up.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that luminous kind of, some people call it numinous state.
Yeah, well, half awake, half asleep. I think Tinkerbell in the movie Hook with our friend Robin Williams said, Peter, don't worry. Just after your dreams have finished and just before you fully wake up, I'll always be there and you can speak to me. So somewhere in there, the truth of our Tinkerbell or our inner muse is waiting. There's interesting brainwaves and things going on in that state, especially for, I guess, yogis and different Tibetan masters and explorers of inner states. They say that some of the more interesting, I guess, spiritual practices can be done like between dreams or when dreams are complete before we wake up. In our case, I guess in the case of the book, it's a lot of artists who are able to tap that half-awake state.
Well, and
It's
practice
because the
it.
conscious mind hasn't fully kicked in, I guess. Our subconscious is more present.
Yeah. I mean, what I like about your book is you make clear these are individuals who actually use that capacity that we all have, and they make a point of working with it in order to cultivate, a new song or a new idea.
Yeah, and some do it actively, like Sting. He's one of what I call the rock and roll shamans.
Right.
He says the shamanic art of songwriting, so I kind of borrowed his own word about himself. But he says he'll actively go in that kind of halfway state, as does Pharrell. Pharrell actually sort of sees visuals of sound, like colors and lights, as does Beyonce and others. So they have an interesting synesthesia, if you know what that is, or
Sure.
crossing of senses. And so they can kind of go into this state where the subconscious is being tapped pretty directly. Sometimes it's dreams that just arrive with a new method, but with a new idea, a new creative hook or a lyric or sometimes a career direction. But often if we go to sleep with an intention, I guess people have done this when they said, that problem I have at work, let me just sleep on it.
Right.
Kind of a simple form of the same thing. But if we clear our mind a little bit and really make an intention, maybe even write it down, wow, I'd like a new insight for my creative project, for my song, for my art, for my work programming problem. Dreams, or at least sleep, the subconscious responds.
And, of course, the Greeks used dreaming for healing, and shamans use dreams for just about everything. Should I help this community? How can I help this community? Do I heal this river? How do I heal this river? When you put together the book, I loved your chapter about well-known artists who had dream visits from deceased family or famous colleagues who brought them inspirations and guidance. Share some of those stories with us.
Well, that's an interesting one. So, can people from the other side contact and help the living? It seems, when we start to look at the data, that is, lots of dream reports, and some of them with verifiable info that the waking couldn't know any other way.
Right.
The living couldn't know. So it gets to be interesting, at least anecdotally and from statistics also, that yes, there's some kind of contact. As one example here, the late Jimi Hendrix, who himself was pretty dream-inspired for Purple Haze and some of the other songs, he actually comes and teaches. So now it's not as much creative insight as it is teaching them how to play guitar, very complicated licks, such as Duane Allman. He taught him on the fretboard of, I think, the sink faucet in a hotel for Duane Allman from the Allman Brothers. And he also taught the late Stevie Ray Vaughan how to do some very complicated fingerings. And the interesting one with that recount, after Stevie Ray Vaughan recounted it to a journalist, his wife was there. He said, well, that's interesting because Stevie was in bed with his arms stretched out. He was sleeping. But his face was all scrunched up like when he does very hard solos on the guitar. So maybe some muscle memory or actual physical skill learning with the body while we sleep, taught by Jimi Hendrix in this case.
But you also point out that, for instance, John Lennon, George Harrison, some musicians have dreamt about their own deaths.
Yeah. Well, John Lennon's a bit of an interesting case. George Harrison, I don't know if he dreamt about his own death, but he did come and visit his son. And also, I guess he saw his father right at the moment of his his dad's death, so that was kind of more of a waking vision.
Mm-hmm.
But John Lennon actually had two, and in my opinion, as a bit of a dream analyst there, three pretty clear dreams about his own funeral, about a year before, 1979 or so. And in one, he saw a chubby stranger enter into a restaurant wearing spectacles, pretty specific,
Yeah.
who was a very good description of the person who actually, shot him about a year later.
Mm.
And then also he was outside the Dakota, the hotel where he lived, in another. In the first dream with the restaurant, he asked a stranger to identify himself, and could he? And the police came in and said, this man entered the restaurant with a revolver. And Lennon was pretty anxious and nervous about the dream when he woke up and was upset he couldn't remember more details. And unfortunately, we all know the tragic events of about a year later with a chubby stranger wearing spectacles outside the Dakota.
Yeah.
The dream facts played true.
Yeah. I mean, premonitory dreams are common, just people don't often or always talk about them. When you teach people dreaming, what do you say about premonitory dreams?
Well, first, it depends sort of on the person, because I can go science language or just more experiential, depending if they trust it or not. For science, I usually say, well, actually, 2 out of 3 people, statistically, will have dreamt something fairly specific that they feel later came true in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty significant, 2
Sure
out of 3
is.
people.
Yeah.
And in my kind of anecdotal research, it's actually quite a bit more than that, but the people remember it later once talking to them. Oh, yeah, I had this. So something common. So it ends up being more a question of what can you do with it. Well, I first say many people are kind of scared at first. Wow, it's possible? Nobody told me about this. Just like I felt when I had my, near drowning and starting having premonition dreams. They didn't tell me about this in physical class. You can tune into the future somehow in dreams.
Yeah.
So
of course.
After we kind of move through the fear, and many people have that step, then they kind of sometimes go into guilt. Oh, no, I wish I could have saved this, or I wish I could have stopped 9/11.
Right.
Many people dreamt of that before.
Right.
Or I wish I could have stopped this and this, like the person there, Patti Smith, actually dreamt of Brian Jones, the original founder of the Rolling Stones.
Right.
Who later, I think a few weeks later, drowned, and she saw him, and she pretty much knew waking up that he was going to be, and she didn't know how to contact him, and later she felt guilty. And then I tell people, dreams don't come to make us feel guilty like that. They might come as a quickening or a teaching for next time we have a premonition, so that we listen to it and we act on it. But the first time, it's more of a guidance, not to make us feel guilty.
Why don't we, I thought one of the nice things is and thank you for not only the clips of your music, all of the music we'll hear coming in and out of our breaks tonight are by our guest, Craig Sim Webb. Again, his book, The Dreams Behind the Music, and you can learn more online at www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com. But we also have a few clips of songs that you have talked about in your book, like the Beatles' Yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
So this was dream-inspired?
Yeah, well, Sir McCartney, who we saw, I think, on James Corden a week or so ago, he woke up with this melody, and the original words were actually scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs. And just like you laughed, I guess the other Beatles laughed, and George Martin, the manager, laughed, and Paul thought he had nicked it. That was his language for saying he'd sort of stolen it from somebody, because he was sure it sounded way too familiar. But nobody heard it, and they said, well, you'll have to change the lyrics, but I think it's yours. It's kind of catchy. So eventually, I think it took a month or so, he owned it, which is kind of an important, step in terms of creativity. He said, okay, it's mine, and then started working on it, and then he dreamt the title, Yesterday, and changed the lyrics.
Such a beautiful song.
I think the power behind it had so much alchemical, transformational power that the Beatles, it's the first song all the Beatles didn't record together. They said, well, if it goes well, it can be a Beatles song. Otherwise, it's a Paul McCartney experiment.
Mm-hmm, that's interesting. How about Let It Be? Why don't we hear that for a second? Well,
I guess we'll just let it be.
Times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be.
So what about this one? I mean, these are such extraordinary songs.
Iconic, huh?
Just beautiful.
Yeah, well, that one touched Paul so strongly. He, it was a tough time for him and the Beatles with Yoko and John, and I guess the parting of ways, the official parting of ways. And his mother, Mary, many people think it's the Virgin Mary, and I guess artistically it can well be whoever you like. But his mother, who was named Mary, who died about 7 years before, came in the dream at those tough times and said, Paul, just let it be, son.
How beautiful.
Well, it touched me so deeply, I guess it could touch many people. So he wrote a song about it.
Yeah, there was also a story that you shared, and I made a note of it somewhere here. Stevie Wonder's mother, Lula, who came to him. He wanted to stop working after she died. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, well, it's interesting just more generally how it's often a mother or a grandmother or a father or a very close colleague who comes with the big dream gift, let's call it. So someone that we have a strong emotional bond with and who would like to contribute to our well-being. In this case, a mother is not a big surprise. For Lula, Stevie Wonder's mom, it was the most important person of his life. He actually wrote a number of songs with her. Many people don't know, like Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and some others. And he said, I want to take a year off just to really honor her and our connection. He told his manager, his agent, everybody, can you cancel my tour, cancel my events and things? And they did, and they understood. And then a few weeks later, he came and said, could we put back on the tour? Could we add in the media engagements? And actually, let's add on a second leg to the tour, and we're going to do 2 new albums. And they said, what happened? I mean, I thought you wanted to grieve. He goes, well, Mama came in the dream and said, Stevie, this is a very universal thing, the loss of one of your dearest loved ones, losing me. In the dream, she said, you should really be going out and sharing your message of love at this time, like precisely, because it could touch so many people. So it changed the direction of his career that year. His mom came, and he put back on the tours, and he's actually doing a tribute, I guess, sort of album to his mother.
So beautiful. Such wonderful stories. I so enjoy your book, The Dreams Behind the Music. We're going to take a little break. Our guest is Craig Sim Webb. You can learn more at www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com. And this is instrumental called Morpheo N. I think I got it right. Hi, I'm Zoe Hieronymus, inviting you to read my new book, White Spirit Animals, Prophets of Change. Explore the power and wisdom of sacred white spirit animals, which are held sacred by indigenous cultures and are part of shamanic traditions worldwide. The white spirit bear, lion, elephant, wolf, and buffalo are apex guardians of complex ecosystems. Learn why they must all be protected and what wisdom teachings they share. Discover how dream telepathy with nature, animals, and each other can be used for positive transformation in the world today. Read White Spirit Animals, Prophets of Change, and find more online at www.whitespiritanimals.com. That's www.whitespiritanimals.com.
Hello, this is Thomas Hausenberger, a lucid dreaming facilitator with the Monroe Institute. You can learn more about us at monroeinstitute.org. You are listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Zohara Hieronymus.
From a dream, this melody just sprang into my life, yeah. In this way, the seeds of soul are born. Well, my friends and family and lover, they're very dear to me, yeah. But without the muse, I'd be forlorn.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. You heard earlier Thomas Hassenberger. What he was talking about was lucid dreaming, which is taught at the Monroe Institute. And the music you just heard is from our current guest, Craig Sim Webb, and his book, The Dreams Behind the Music. Learn creative dreaming as 100 top artists reveal their breakthrough inspirations. And it's published by the Dreams Foundation, 2016. Go to www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com. So that music that we just heard, and I think your other one that I called Morpheo N, it's called Morpheon, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
What was a capital N? It looked like, you like that? Morpheo N, there you go. And this one we just heard is called Lucid, Never Felt As Good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how the process, like, I'm actually very lucky, I consider, I'm very grateful to that, like many of the artists, I dream music, except I can dream it like a few times a week, almost on demand.
Uh-huh.
So I record little sound bites with a voice recorder beside my bed at night, like many of the top artists do here who use dream-inspired music. That one was interesting, and it shows some principles. So the title is Lucid. The original, I guess, hook or chorus line there, wherever I've been in my life, I've never felt as good as when I'm with you. That came in a dream just by itself, kind of like McCartney's Yesterday, I guess.
Right.
And it did take me a few months to own it, and because, life is busy, and many of these dream seeds come, and which one to do. But eventually I started writing the chords and getting some other lyrics, and then the sound of the song came in a second dream, and it was kind of distortion guitar and kind of electric or metal. I was like, wow, that's not really me. I'm more folk or light, easy listening. But it was pushing my edges. I think dreams come as a quickening or a calling for us to develop new selves. So I kind of got on my inner rocker, inner rock and roller, that is.
Yeah.
And started with some rock and roll and distortion. And then it came and showed me how to finish the chorus and stuff. So it's almost like once we take steps, the subconscious or the inner self or our guidance, whatever you want to call it, supports us along the journey. But if we don't take a step, if we don't show up for the first date, we may not go steady with that new song or that new invention or that healing or whatever.
Right. It's the effort. And as you heard in that little drop about my own book, I practiced telepathic dreaming with animal species for 4 years. And it takes, just like you're saying, you have to make the commitment to do it, and then be patient and humble and wait and write what you hear. And it doesn't always make sense in the beginning, but sometimes if you just give it time, like I was a slow learner, sometimes the animals would have to repeat a dream 3 and 4 times before I could finally understand what they were trying to tell me.
Yeah, and there's lots of levels. Like, I guess at first we're tuning our radio. You're kind of tuning into those states. And then once you've got the data, let's say, fairly clearly, it's not always in the language of waking life, right?
Right.
These symbolism, archetypes, feelings, or music even, or I guess animal sounds, colors. So we have to learn how to translate, too. And then that's a gift later. We become somebody who can translate, but it takes a while.
No, it does. How about if we listen to a song from Sting, Every Breath You Take?
Oh, yeah.
So beautiful. So this is a dream-inspired beauty?
Yes, this is from our rock and roll shaman Sting, who's quite connected, I guess, with the inner land of music and especially lyrics. And he said he woke up in the middle of the night with that line in his head, every breath you take, every move you make. And I guess he translated it more or less directly and then added on, I guess, the different music and other lyrics. But what I mostly see is often, there's a few dreamers who get the whole song, like a Mozart who actually sees the whole song visually in one instant and then later has to write it. But many of the artists kind of get a hook or a little riff or a sound bite or maybe even just a feeling, and then they have to use their creativity. And it's often best done, in other words, the song is written right after waking or maybe the next morning. And Sting said it took him about an hour during the night, and he just finished most of the song then, which is good because it's kind of a direct download before it gets too fuzzy, you know.
Mm-hmm. No, and I remember, wasn't it Heindel? You said in the composing of Messiah.
A Messiah, a very famous song.
Yeah, extraordinary symphony, and he claims that all came to him from the heavens, from the angels. And he was. Tell the story.
Well, Handel is one of the forefathers of, I guess, the whole classical movement of different artists, I guess, in Europe. And he was obviously a pretty talented composer, as many of these artists are. They have some of their craft together. But he went, I think, holed himself up in his little flat in England for like 3 weeks, not even barely taking any meals. So there is the idea of really, really focusing and in some ways probably going into a deeper state, shamanic journey, we might call it nowadays. But to getting into that state, one time the person delivering his meals that were mostly untouched, by the way, Handel Handel came out and said, "Wow, I just did see the glory of heaven and the hosts," and he had just finished the Hallelujah chorus in the Messiah, which is definitely his best known work. But it inspired many other composers. That's what I like about these kind of dream inspired songs. There's something alchemical in the DNA or the seed or the essence of a song that can really change not just the dreamer, but many others, including colleagues who later write about it. And such.
That's a beautiful point. And it makes one wonder about that consciousness that links us all, because that's kind of what that luminous state is, that between conscious and unconscious is maybe where the collective conscious is all connected. It just sort of theorizing, but it's so interesting what that comment, that from those songs you get this kind of mass appeal.
And there's that kind of continuing alchemy. I don't know exactly how to say it in like normal English. I call it like the DNA of the song is kind of different. There's a big change in there, like the Yesterday. Or something like a little bit older, but many folks might remember the Highwaymen.
Sure.
Which was including Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, and Waylon Jennings. But the original song was The Highwayman was written by Jimmy Webb, who's actually a Grammy-winning songwriter, won a Grammy for that. But he tried to do it, didn't get a hit. Glenn Campbell picked it up, and he liked it so much, the song, he recorded it, that it actually caused him to divorce his longtime record company because they wouldn't do it. And he said, "You're not going to do it? Well, this is my new sound." And he was re-recording somebody else's song. And then he encouraged Johnny Cash and the others, you should call yourself the Highwayman, and you should do this song, The Highwayman, which was inspired by Jimmy Webb's Nightmare. So down the line, it kind of changed the whole record contract and created a new start for Glenn Campbell, and then this whole new supergroup, and many things down the line, which is interesting from one single nightmare somebody woke up with privately, right?
Yeah. No, and as you point out, I haven't seen the movie Inception. Maybe some of our audience have, where characters meet in dreams and influence thoughts and decisions of another person. And this kind of psi capacity is becoming very popular in Netflix TV shows, and the multidimensionality of consciousness, which is fascinating to see, given that we've talked about it for 30 plus years as serious sort of investigators of things. But share with us what happens, because you work with people who actually practice dreaming. I mean, can we dream into each other's dream and then make things happen for each other?
Well, the short answer to that is absolutely. I encourage people who find that a little bit too far out or not quite sure about it. Usually it's a good idea, and I'm saying this as a recovering thinkaholic here because I have my degree in physics, and I went very deep into objective, prove-it-only, and my model kind of world. And then I had my powerful premonitions that were very clear and proved out true, and then lucid dreams and things like that. And I was like, wait, there's more here.
Wait, before you pass that, was there a certain point at which your dreams became such a compelling part of your life?
Well, I didn't really mention so much about my early journey, but I had a degree in physics, and I was just pursuing it, science and electrical engineering, and I had no thought of anything dream-related or psi or anything outside of that. And then I had this powerful near drowning under a raft and started remembering up to about 10 dreams a day, clearly.
Wow.
And into the afternoon and into following days, which was extremely unusual. I wasn't against it, but I just never really looked at that.
Yeah, you hadn't paid much attention to it.
And so, this data, some of it playing true.
How old were you when you started paying attention to your dreams?
Yeah, well, I started paying attention right away. I was open-minded enough to note the data as a real scientist.
Yeah.
And then saw that, hey, wait, these things connect with events, and then started getting creative insights and many of the things later I talked about. But I guess the first 7 years or so were spent just trying to believe it, explore it, and learn what had been done.
Were you in your 20s, your 30s?
Yeah, 21.
Nice.
This is a pretty traditional
nice time period. Yeah.
For sort of shaman's awakening, I guess.
And you were already a musician by then.
I had bought my own guitar at age 19 and started plucking around, so maybe it was in the mix for me to write the book way back early.
Well, what I wanted to ask you was because, music and intuition and sort of these feeling states which are not necessarily verbal, but they take in meaning. Yeah. How do you see the two things related, particularly in having written the book and interviewed so many musicians?
Well, it's definitely to use the word a little loosely, a language. But it's not even that loose. It's a pretty accurate statement to say music is definitely a language.
Right.
As you mentioned, it's often very strongly connected with feelings. I've heard research that says about 2/3 of the emotional impact of a movie, like what you remember and what sticks with you feeling-wise, is actually the soundtrack. So feelings and music are very strongly connected. And I wasn't too connected with feelings, just have to be honest here. I was very heady. That's why I say I'm a recovering thinkaholic.
Right.
But at least I know that, and that's good news. But I didn't know anything about intuition, or I guess maybe the word hunches, but I never used it until life kind of swung me to the other end of the extreme. So I started exploring personally first, and then more publicly later, and merging the two, because I don't think we want to throw out reasoning or science. As much as possible, it's fun to check it and then see how we can stretch it, expand it, tweak it. But my journey was one of kind of like I almost call it a kidnapping, where I was taken away from my physics degree without my permission.
It's fascinating.
And then I came back to the science about 7 years later and did the Stanford lucid dreaming research that kind of brought lucid dreaming to the West.
Aha. How interesting. And so from the lucid dreaming to now your book about musicians and their use of dreams, what are some of the ways in which our audience can use their dreams for their own benefit?
Oh, that's a great question, because really the bottom line is I don't really tell anybody they have to believe what I share. I mean, I think it's good if they keep an open mind. But just try it. All the experiments, all the techniques, all the principles should play out for anybody. They're universal, right? So one thing they can do is just get the doorway a little more open, and by that I mean boost dream recall. And it's really just the connection between our waking and our dreaming minds, let's say different levels of our psyche. I call it the inner net connection.
Yeah,
So
but you know, I have to say, having done the dreaming with animals so that they would communicate their story, not my story of them,
I like that.
I was pretty tired because I was waking up so many times in the middle of the night writing down things they said, though the easiest dream we generally remember is the last one we have, in the last dream we have in the morning. But I was so focused on being able to hear them that even when I was dreaming, I'm in my dream telling myself, now wake up and write this down.
So there was a narrator in your dream? That's interesting.
Yeah, oftentimes I'm narrating the dream. I mean, I'm there.
Consciousness of dreamer and then narrator. Third and first person, I call it.
Oh, interesting. So I say to people, yes, you really can practice, but also know that it takes a will to do it.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it, because it's not hard. I encourage people, watch out, because in the realm of subtle experience, like dreams, you don't want to believe things that can limit you, like it's hard, or I can't do it, or they're so gifted. Because really, this is a birthright of every human, if not every mammal.
Yes.
It's just a question that many of us got disconnected, or we're focused outward on life, and we don't really see any benefit in spending time. So like a relationship, I usually liken it to a personal and very important relationship with our own deeper self, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can just start dating, check it out, maybe on the weekends, or try to recall a dream or two. And many people don't really have an easy way to access that channel, so I'll just mention that if we turn the physical senses down when we just first wake up, in other words, if we don't move, or if we did move in bed, we just roll back to the same position. And if we opened our eyes, then just close them, or try to keep them closed, and try not to wake up to an alarm, set a body clock. You'll see your intention can wake you up like 10 minutes before the alarm every time. And that way we keep the physical sensory input low, and then the dreams come in much easier because they're more subtle and softer at the start. So there's some good tips for dream recall. Yeah,
what happens, just this last question before we go into our final break, so that point at which you're waking up, because recently since I've stopped working at remembering my dreams, I'm just dreaming and having a life and, not doing what I was doing for so long very industriously for a purpose, which was to communicate another being's, other mammals' needs, is that now I'm finding, it's curious because it didn't used to be, I used to remember my dreams so easily, is that point, and I know that people in the audience are going, yeah, that happens to me. I'll remember the dream, and as soon as I open my eyes, I forget it.
Well, the visual memory, the visual cortex is pretty strongly tied with at least what most people use as the word dream or dreaming.
Right.
The storyline dreams with sort of visuals. So I just encourage people to try to keep the eyes closed, and then notice that at the start it's a little subtle, and you have to kind of tweak it and spend a bit of focus. But like any muscle, mental muscle, it can grow with a little focus. Weeks to 1 month should really get you going again if you wanted to.
So it's the eyes opening that are doing me in.
Yeah, the eyes opening or actually moving is probably even more serious. So rolling over or even turning our head, because the blood flow, the body consciousness. So just go back to the exact same position, and then have something that you can act on. Because like any relationship, the person comes back when they know that you'll show up for the date and you appreciated it last time. So if you got an insight, act on it in their life.
I hear you. So in the process of this dream communication, and this is what I have found with animals and totems and all of that, is if somebody sees a bird and they see a bird repeatedly, I say, well, then pay attention. So it's the same thing with our dreams. Just sort of pay attention to the subtlety of it.
They often come with gifts.
Yeah.
And if we just throw them away, ignore them, or forget them, they may not come as often.
Yeah. That's a lovely way to speak of it. All right, we're going to go into our break with an instrumental from our guest, Craig Sim Webb, and it's from Lucid.
Hi, I'm Penny Pierce, author of Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity. I've been writing and teaching about personal transformation for many years, and I have written 10 books on various aspects of the subject. You can learn more about me at my website, which is just my name, pennypierce.com, but it's spelled PENNEYPEIRCE. You're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Zoe Hieronymus.
Talking about polymers, that's right. Polymers are your friends, yeah, polymers. Long chemical chains that never end. Oh, why use china and silverware?
Wonderful song, Polymers, by our guest, Craig Sim Webb. Again, his book, The Dreams Behind the Music. Learn creative dreaming as 100-plus top artists reveal their breakthrough inspirations, and it's published by Dreams Foundation 2016. Learn more at the website www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com. A friend of my husband, Ziggy Marley, has talked on our program, and I saw it mentioned in your book, that he uses dreaming to talk to his father, Bob Marley, and Bob will come and see him all the time.
Yeah, and note that they come from a slightly different culture, I guess a Jamaican background, where it's more common, more accepted, and so they never really unlearned what I guess many of us do in our school system. So a natural communication channel. They kept their connection to the internet, and he can talk to his father now through there. And he writes some of his music based on some of his inspirations, like the meetings.
Yeah, it's lovely. I tell people, the easiest way to practice dream telepathy is with a loved one of your children or your spouse or a good friend, and you make an agreement. And you talk to each other before you go to sleep that night, and you say, we're going to visit each other tonight. You can even say where you're going to meet. And it's very interesting how many people, maybe not on the first try, but certainly within a very short span of effort, do find that they can communicate. And I do know that there are people who have used this method if they both travel a lot and they're in different parts of the world, that it's one way they feel they can know that each other is okay.
Yeah, a fascinating skill, and like I like to make the principle of the analogy. I think it's from the Upanishads, and then later the Bible and the Quran and things. But as above, so below. In other words, anything that appears in our waking culture and mass culture here, pop culture, will have its equivalent on inner levels in dreams and other deeper states. So if we have something like a software program, Skype or Zoom, or I guess even cell phones, but even something visual,
right.
You can see the person, there's going to be an inner equivalent, like dream meetings. And sometimes for people we haven't even programmed, for example, our friend from YouTube, Bono, he was kind of half awake one night, I guess preparing for an important performance in Wembley Arena the next day with U2. And he was listening to the soundtrack for Blue Velvet, which had Roy Orbison's song In Dreams on it, which itself was dream-inspired. but he didn't know at the time, and he was just kind of half awake, and he woke up with this song, Mystery Girl, she's a mystery to me. And he thought, that sounds pretty Roy Orbison. He looked on the soundtrack and to see what the songs were, and there wasn't any Mystery Girl, but he did see Orbison. He said, oh, well, maybe that's the lyrics. And that afternoon, he started writing some lyrics. He said, maybe it's mine. Maybe I just wrote it. And then even after the performance, he was still working on the song, and he played it for the other guys in the band and said, does this sound like Orbison? Or he said, Orbisonic.
Orbisonic, right. Uh-huh.
And they said, it does kind of, but I haven't really heard it before. And then there's a knock at the door. This is after their performance. And the security guard says, Bono and friends, Mr. Orbison, Roy Orbison's here to see you. They didn't even know he was in the UK, let alone they didn't meet him or ever talk to him before, let alone at their concert. And he came in, and they let him in. He said, oh, wow, great concert, guys. And then his second thing he said was, do you have a song for me?
Oh, how fascinating.
And Bono said, I guess I do. And he ended up producing it on Roy Orbison's last album, Mystery Girl.
Isn't that beautiful? What about California Dreaming by the Mamas and the Papas?
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty iconic one there, too. Well, I guess it connects with the deep wish for many East Coasters during the middle of a super cold winter. Just like John Phillips from Mamas and Papas woke up with this phrase, California Dreaming, kind of a song line. And he said, well, that's pretty interesting. And he knows inspirations, I guess, as an artist. And he woke up his wife, Michelle Phillips, also the mother of, I guess, the more recent band, Wilson Phillips, the daughter. And she said, oh, really don't want to get up right now. Could we work on it in the morning? But, John insisted, and then they wrote California Dreaming, or most of the song, right that night in the middle of a super cold East Coast winter.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it was a pretty big hit. Maybe he tapped something pretty strong on the internet and the collective conscious.
Well,
what I find interesting and what I encourage people to remember here is they've, I guess especially Michelle Phillips, but I'm sure the other band members ran into many, many people who said, that song, and especially just the lyrics and especially the chorus, California Dreaming, which was from the Dream, that inspired me to move and travel somewhere warm and change my life and just do something different. And I did it because of that song. So it's that alchemical sort of transformation of power. When we act on it, we give it away. It can touch so many people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love this thought that you've now incubated for me about the DNA of dreaming, because I noticed even this book, I've written 4 books, and I used to dream of the prophets when I was writing about the prophets, and it's a beautiful thing because you feel, I personally feel like almost like a secretary. I don't really feel that
That's
it's
a good
me.
way to say it.
That's how it feels. It feels like
stenographer.
Yes, exactly. That's how it often feels when you get those kinds of lucid dreams. And I know my husband has had to practice our entire 40-plus years together of writing things down. Oh, my gosh, he's always writing things down in the middle of the night. So, and it comes from actually practicing, looking for solutions to whatever it is in anybody's life, that you really can use your dreams to help you solve your challenges and also to celebrate your beautiful life. How about this, Laura, can we listen to Train's Drops of Jupiter?
Now that she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her head. She acts like summer and walks like rain, reminds me that there's a time to change.
I love all these songs. It's like, boy, it's so funny. You remind me when I was a daily talk show host, people used to tune in to hear my bumps. The music I'd use going in and out of break. Nice. I paid so much attention to it. It used to be one of my favorite parts of production was picking out my music. But when you look at all of this, you are a musician, you're also a scientist, you're also an author, you're also a teacher. What is it that challenges you about this field? Is there an area that you go, oh my gosh, I wish I could solve this?
Yeah, that's a good one. So where's my edge? It actually has been changing. I guess part of that is my own personal growth and learning. But I do see some of the things that were tough for me before, like at least convincing people that, yes, it's possible to have lucid dreams, to be awake while we're asleep, to have the consciousness there with us,
right,
our memory and things. That has changed now with movies like Inception and Vanilla Sky and many others, actually, that it's accepted, and now it becomes sort of my edge is, okay, so now people say it's possible.
Right.
What do you do with this new tool? And the same thing for me. So it's not so much teaching now, it's starting to use it, implement more, and just show people, hey, we can do this. For example, I tell people, if you try it, it can work. 6 out of 7 students in one of my teleclasses, because I offer teleclasses, on the very first night actually dreamt music, and they'd never really had it or tried before. That's a lot, 6 out of 7. And then the 7th one about a week later, and 2 of them actually had 3 musical dreams. So it seems like it's there for the asking, just by putting an attempt. So I say people, keep an open mind and just try the techniques, try the strategies. So I guess from teaching, I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit more into artist, and as you hear with the music there, practicing what I'm preaching, and including some dream-inspired music.
Well, there's so many scientists who say that their inventions or their idea or their understanding of the ozone hole, or so, I can think of so many instances throughout the years of research that I've done where they had their idea from a dream or one of those flash moments, just a vision that was just not normal consciousness in the sense it's not making dinner, but it's while making dinner having an experience.
Yeah, usually while the consciousness is kind of quiet, like shower is a big one. Michael Bublé got some of his big music there. Or making dinner, or out on a walk, or something where we don't have to use too much conscious focus and the mind's wandering. Sting would go walking to get his lyrics in that kind of half shamanic state. And sometimes even with the eyes half open or half closed. And somebody like Salvador Dali actually uses very specific techniques on purpose, like sitting on a bony armchair with a key, and then when he would just get on the edge of sleep, the key would fall and ring on the floor, and so he would wake himself up. And he found that way he got huge inspirations for his paintings, but very actively searching and looking for them. So techniques to help us accent or, I guess, improve our success rate.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining us, Craig. A beautiful work, www.dreamsbehindthemusic.com, and we'll go out with a clip you told us about, Billy Joel's Just the Way You Are.
Okay, great to join you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. You going to play it?
I'll take the bad times. I take you just the way you are.
Stay connected with stimulating talk and breaking news on Talk Radio 680 WCBM, Baltimore, and WCBM.com.